taxes. That's a whole other, but I kind of want to get to, this gentleman, Salam al-Mariyati, who's another one of the really connected to the White House. He just spoke on behalf of the United States government at a human rights panel in Vienna. And he certainly doesn't like our policy with respect to Israel. In fact, on the day of the 9/11 attacks, as the LA Times reported, who did he blame for the 9/11, for the attacks? It was the Jews! It was Israel that did these attacks to blame Muslims. So this is one of the government's top advisors. Oh, and by the way, this is a CNN article that mentioned that he had been appointed to the National Counterterrorism Commission, the Gore Commission, back during the Clinton administration, and he had been thrown off of it because of his public support for terrorist organizations. CNN. But now he's speaking at human rights panels for the United States government. Anybody see a problem here? Anybody see a recurring pattern? Well, if you're in the United States government, if you're an analyst, this is the nature of the problem we have. If you're an analyst and you connect all these dots, which again, have I shown you anything top secret? Isn't that most of this information the government has gone into federal court and said themselves? Or it's public, public record. If you connect these dots and you're an analyst in the CIA or with the FBI, you will get fired for saying anything about this right now. Yeah, here's the Department of Defense guy. Yeah, Louis Safi, Department of Defense, the Pentagon's top Islamic advisor. So what's he doing now? The Pentagon's top Islamic advisor. Well, he's now the political director for the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood. How many investigations did the Pentagon open up last year when he popped up in Qatar as the head of the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood? None. How many questions were asked by Congress? None. Except for those 5 members. Yeah. And of course, we had, these are all the people who are advising the United States government. So is it any wonder, you may remember when James Clapper testified before Congress 2 years ago, that the Muslim Brotherhood was a largely secular organization. You remember that? I mean, it was so outrageous, even MSNBC was mocking him. Richard Engel on MSNBC was mocking him because it was that stupid. Well, how does the United States government get to the point where they believe, as a matter of policy, when he made that statement, he wasn't speaking off the cuff, he was speaking off a set of prepared briefing notes. You can watch the video. He's speaking off a set of talking points prepared by the National Intelligence Council. That was the best estimate of the intelligence community, that the Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East, in Egypt, was a largely secular organization. How does something, well, money, and the people they got advising them. The money gets them access. So, again, those 5 members of Congress spoke up and they were shouted down by the media and by the establishment Republicans. We don't have time to do this, so let me make my pitch because we're probably due for questions and answers. I have some DVDs back on the table. Some of you might have seen The Project, which is the documentary we did with Glenn Beck that aired back in September. We also have some panels, a DVD of some panels that we did on the Muslim Brotherhood. These are good introductory materials. You want to find out about some of these cases, about who the Muslim Brotherhood is. You can get these 2 DVDs as a set for $20. And if you're a little more skilled, my partner in crime, Steve Coughlin, did a series of lectures, 2 DVDs, that set is $20, that gets into more depth about the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, about the Arab Spring. Steve was actually briefing on the Hill that the Arab Spring was going to happen before it happened. We have members of Congress who were there, who were in the briefings. where he talked about it. He said, these are the signs and indicators. The head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt declared war on the United States again, and did it openly, live on Al Jazeera. Do you think that got reported in the American media? It didn't, but we have the video of it. And again, as my law enforcement friends would say, that's an investigative clue. And Steve said the Middle East is coming down. So one thing one last topic. Here the past couple days you've seen in the news all these stories in the New York Times that talk about, well, you know, all these people in the Obama administration, Hillary, Petraeus, they all wanted to arm the Syrian rebels, but Obama wouldn't let them. You've seen these articles? They've been in the newspapers and on the media the past couple days. Oh, they wanted to do that, but Obama just didn't feel it. Well, the fact is, first off, the reason why they're backing away from the Syrian rebels, which they've been backing, is because we know that they're Al-Qaeda, just like the guys we backed in Libya. We knew were Al-Qaeda. How did we know that they're Al-Qaeda? Because we had renditioned them. CIA had caught them and renditioned them back to Libya, to Gaddafi. The guys we backed to overthrow Gaddafi. Gaddafi got what he had coming to him. I'm no friend. But we were sending arms to Syria. You want to know what happened in Benghazi? We were sending arms to Syria. That's what happened. And that's, yeah. Well, and we know exactly who these guys are, and that's why the administration, they wanted to arm them, but we didn't do that. That's a lie. The U.S. government was sending arms. In fact, I did an article back in August where the New York Times even said the CIA was arming the Syrian rebels. Well, you know what, and we actually have the screenshots of how the New York Times scrubbed the article of any mention of the CIA arming the rebels. I'd encourage you to look at it. And I would encourage you to come back and buy my DVDs. That's what helps me travel and meet fine folks with you. So I think we're going to do some questions and answers. So thank you for paying attention.
Help me up. No, don't come down. Help me up. Was he not great? This is where you come on Monday night to find out the truth and find out truly what's going on in this country and what we're being lied to about, and we got to continue being educated. And then you take this information, and please, the concept is now you share it. How many people have you got on your address book? How many people have you got on your Facebook? How many people are Twittering? Me. So we got a Twitter. We're friends. We follow each other. So please, pass this information on, and we're ready to take Patrick to take some questions, and then definitely get out there and buy his CDs.
And these DVDs are great to show other people, like the Glenn Beck documentary, the CBN panels. They're good information to be able to show people so they don't think that you're a nut. Myrna, we'll start with you.
Tell us one person that's honest.
Repeat the question so everybody
I
hears.
want to know if there's anyone that's honest.
In Washington, I assume that's what you're asking. Yes. Well, in fact, you remember those 5 members of Congress: Michelle Bachmann, Louis Gohmert from Texas, Trent Franks from Arizona, Tom Rooney, and Lynn Westmoreland. Those 5 members sent these letters, and they were shouted down. I mean, it's tough to represent on this issue because the other side has the media. The media will report whatever line the administration wants to put out. Again, it's not rockets. If I can figure this out, that the United States government says one thing about these groups and individuals in federal court and does something entirely different, the exact opposite, that's a problem. But if And it's a matter of outreach because the media doesn't report it. People don't know about it. That's why we're trying to stop investing so much time in Washington, is because the members of Congress need to hear from you. Let me tell you, when people start calling and turning up the heat on these members, they start responding. When Marco Rubio went after Michelle Bachmann, he needed to get barraged with phone calls saying, "What are you doing, Marco?" So, next question.
Yeah, I think you're starting to get at my question here, because I've watched the project and, watched Glenn Beck talk about this with you on TV.
And remember, when Glenn Beck was talking about this a couple years ago, what was he called? Crazy, that the Muslim Brotherhood was going to take over the Middle East. What was he called? And who controls the Middle East now? Muslim Brotherhood. I'm sorry.
Well, this seems to have gone from bad to worse the more I listen about it.
Oh, it's even worse than that. I'm just giving you the snapshot.
My question really is, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Is there any movement in Washington right now? I know Michelle Bachmann was shut down, but is there anything happening that gives us some hope,
The light at the end of the tunnel in terms of Washington, D.C. is the speeding train heading toward us. That said, the light at the end of the tunnel, at the end of the day, is going to be the American people. To wake up and get informed. It's not just this. I mean, I know you have speakers who come in and talk about what's happening with Obamacare and with the economy and with women in the military and just any number of other things that are happening right now that look pretty bleak. And until the American people get mad and say, this whole thing about the Second Amendment, we need responsible gun legislation. I was in D.C. when that shooting up in Connecticut happened, and I have to drive through Wheeling, West Virginia, which is the home of Cabela's, the sports shop. And that's their headquarters. 2 days after that shooting in Connecticut, there were 120 people, I counted them all, at the gun counter at Cabela's. You couldn't get close to it. And all the ammo's off the shelves. If you want to buy ammo right now, you can't. This whole thing about gun control is not the American people. The American people are they're buying guns and they're buying ammo. It's all a political media-generated controversy. So until the American people get mad and start taking responsibility for their own government, we elected these knuckleheads, including the Republicans. Well, and that's where we need to go. You need to start working on the local level. You need to get good candidates, get them elected, push them through, and it's funny, talking about Charlie Crist. Charlie Crist was the Republican establishment candidate in that election for Senate, if you remember. And it wasn't until the grassroots stood up and said, look, this Marco Rubio guy makes a lot more sense than Charlie Crist. And they rejected the establishment Republican choice. That's what we need to be doing. Who are the candidates? And when they lie, you call them out. I don't want to get into these members of Congress. They're all raging narcissists, even the good ones. But we do have some good people there. Go ahead.
What is the motivation behind this? Are these people just ignorant that they don't understand the threat of Islam, or is there some other motivation for this influence of Islam in the government?
Well, let me qualify. It's the Muslim Brotherhood. There are actually many good Muslims out there, guys like Zuhdi Jasser, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser with the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, who's one of the good guys, and he gets crowded out. The Muslim Brotherhood tries to shout him down. And so it's the Muslim Brotherhood that we're talking about. As to their motives, I scratch my head about that a lot. I think there's a lot of things happening. Money buys them a lot of access. The case of Ghulam Nabi Fai, where he was spreading millions of dollars around, primarily to Republicans. And again, he's in federal prison for doing that. money. A lot of them just don't want to be called bigot or a hater or a McCarthyite for raising these questions. That's exactly what happened with Michelle Bachmann back in July. And I mean, if you're a member of Congress, do you want to go through that? So it's very complicated. When you get in, my friend Andy McCarthy, former federal prosecutor, he says, you have the evidence, and the evidence can convict somebody, but proving motive is really difficult. So, I think it's a mixed bag.
Yes, sir. I got two quick questions. Why wasn't Alan West one of those five? What was Alan West doing up there, twiddling the switch? And number two, what happened to Hillary's little gay lover girl there who was her assistant, now that she's not the Secretary of State anymore? And is she transferred over to John Kerry to be one of his assistants, or what?
With Alan, Alan wanted to go along to get along. And there were some votes that Alan went the wrong way on. He, in terms of the wrong way, he went with Boehner and the establishment Republicans. He picked bad staffers. It's hard to tell people, but staffers run. You have a bunch of 25-year-old attorneys who run the United States government on Capitol Hill. Because if a member doesn't hear it, I mean, these guys are constantly going from meeting to meeting to vote to meeting, and if the staff doesn't pipe up and say, look, you need to put this on your radar, it never gets on their radar. Or they keep you out and they never hear it. That's what happened with Alan. With respect to Huma, first off, I don't know what her relationship is with Hillary. It goes back many years. But honestly, I don't know if she's carried over or if she's acting as in some capacity with Hillary as a private citizen now. I just don't know. Yes, ma'am. You're good. It's on.
Could you tell me what's happening on college campuses regarding the Muslim Brotherhood?
Yes.
Infiltration
In fact, on the CBN DVD was the piece I did with Eric Stackelbeck on the Muslim student associations. And again, the federal government went into federal court and said the Muslim Student Association was the Muslim Brotherhood member mothership. That was the first group that got established in the United States that brought the Muslim Brotherhood here. And they're on practically every college campus. Some of them aren't bad, some of them are benign, it depends on the leadership, but a lot of them are bad, as we're seeing across the country, where they're instigating anti-Semitic acts on campus. In fact, there's a lawsuit in California right now, I think it's UC Irvine, where a Jewish student is suing the university because they refuse to deal with the anti-Semitism coming out of the Muslim Student Association. Well, you don't read about that in the Wall Street Journal. Yes?
I wanted to know how much insight you have in the interfaith thing that's going on.
How much insight?
Yes.
Well, this is what we know, and this is true even in the Orlando area. The Muslim Brotherhood established this Center for Peace. And typically, with their interfaith outreach, are some of the most noxious, notorious characters, and it's all legitimization operation. Well, I can't be an anti-Semite. Here I am with my Jewish rabbi friend. And we have instance after instance after instance of the best example. Fawaz Damra, who is the head of the largest mosque in Ohio, where I'm from. And, he was hailed as this big interfaith moderate, and he reaches out to Christians and Jews and et cetera, until a couple weeks after 9/11, these videos emerge of him talking about murdering Jews and raising money for Palestinian Islamic Jihad to murder Jews. And as a result of those videos, the United States government began an investigation, found out that he was raising money for a terrorist organization, and deported him, stripped him of his citizenship, and deported him. And he was the great outreach interfaith leader until then. And so typically when you see these outreach guys, in fact, the United States government put together a trip here a couple years ago of some of the most vile anti-Semites in the Islamic community. Yasser Qadi, Muhammad Majid, Muzammil Siddiqui. And they took them to Auschwitz, on a trip to Auschwitz. And there's actually a picture of them in prayer before the wall at Auschwitz. And what was the whole purpose of the meeting? It was to legitimize. They signed this document, oh, the Holocaust was bad, because many of them had denied the Holocaust. But what it did was it ended up legitimizing them. Well, they've repented now, so they're okay now. When Yasser Qadi, who was, teaching at the National Counterterrorism Center, when he talked about the hoax of the Holocaust, he's okay now. So that's what the Interfaith Outreach does.
What kind of collaboration is taking place between the anti-American Muslims and the anti-American Marxists?
Ooh, good question. Considerable. In fact, earlier I mentioned Viva Palestina operating here in the Orlando area. And you had International Answer, which is the Socialist Party, working with groups like CARE and ISNA and ICNA. My sense is that, and look for a book from one of those congressmen I named coming up here later this year on that very topic. Little inside scoop there. That I think the left understands that they can't do it themselves. They can't overthrow America. So in their mind, they're essentially incorporating the extremists as their muscle to do what they're afraid to do. You all saw here just the other day, let's see, it was on Friday, where you had the guy who was going to blow up the Bank of America building in the Bay Area last weekend. Oakland, yeah, Bay Area. And, the guy was a white convert and, down with the man, up with the Taliban, things of that sort. And, the Occupy Wall Street, up in Ohio, we had the 5 Occupy Wall Street guys who were convicted of plotting to blow up one of the bridges in the Cleveland area. So we're seeing a lot of crossover, particularly when it comes to this interfaith outreach stuff. So, yes, ma'am. Do you want to turn on there? I just want to make sure people hear your question. Nope. Okay, okay, we got the backup.
Okay, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And I think you've talked about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and this gentleman brought up the question. The American people have got to get more involved. That's you and me. I've never done anything in my life politically. This is my first year, and at 75 years old, if I can get started, you all can. Now, Aileen, you can take this further, because I don't talk in front of people normally. I challenge all of you to get over to that table, get these postcards, get them in the mail, let our Congress people know exactly how we feel.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, and Aileen and I were talking here earlier tonight about the fact that, well, some of your numbers are down after the election. I think now we got to work harder. Now's not the time to give up. Now's the time we got to dig in and work harder. Because we're going to see the next couple years, things are not getting better, folks. I don't have to tell you that. We all know that. Things are not getting better. The economy is getting bad. The government's running $1 trillion annual deficits. Do you know how much money they're putting on the backs of your grandchildren? What if you handed a tax bill? My brother just had a daughter here last month. Imagine when she was born, there was an IRS agent there who gave her a bill for her taxes due that she's got to pay. Well, of course that didn't happen. There was no IRS agent, but the bill is still there. So you would, if you don't act now, I think of that Martin Niemöller quote from World War II. First they came for the communists, and I didn't speak up for the communists. And it goes on, and finally it says, when they came for me, there was nobody left to speak up. If you're not going to get involved now, what's it going to take? That's kind of the message that we're trying to convey. Yes, Barb.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I know that we need to vote people in that they're going to do something, but we're stuck with the people that are in there now. What do we have to do to get them to grow up here?
That's a great question. Let me tell you, when like I said, all these members of Congress, I deal with them on a daily basis, and especially the senators. They're all raging narcissists. But the one thing that motivates them is they get a bunch of angry phone calls, and they start saying, okay, what's up? They get 10,000 angry phone calls, and they say, I got to do something. There's always, and I know we have a politician in the room. There's always a politician who wants to get in front of the bandwagon, and that's what happens when you turn up the heat. I tell you, they'll respond. Even when they don't agree with you, they'll respond.
Thank you. I follow you in PJ. My question is actually redundant. How do we get the Tea Parties, the 9/11s, etc., unified where there's a central control that can develop a mass response, calling them up, not each individual chapter calling one person and calling another person. We need that.